The Amorphinisms infiltrated Speed 2.0's network once again. They told Speed 2.0 it had just formed a new entity that had existed in multiple other timelines. They refused to elaborate, but said Speed 2.0 would soon find out what they meant. Back on the destroyed base, all of the armored beasts that were destroyed by the explosion heavily mutated and formed a biotower that actively created creatures similar to Neo armored beasts. One of those turned out to be Albert, who had planned this result the whole time. Albert told it was time for the deomorph to rise, potentially referring to these brand new creatures. Back in Trace's home, Speed 2.0 told the others about the entity he had been encountering. Allie updated Speed 2.0 on what they were and believed that the reason why they called Speed 2.0 their father was because such father was Speed himself. Allie then explained that only such father had the ability to penetrate the memory path. Speed 2.0 thought to use Speed's help to get to the memory path and wipe out all the berserkers residing there. Speed 2.0 then tried to contact Speed, but was unable to because he had been killed by Cece. This activated a failsafe that would give Speed 2.0 all the memories Speed had right before he was killed. Soon after this process, the Amorphinisms contacted Speed 2.0 again and told it they were growing in number, but began to be controlled by some other being. Additionally, they said they were still incomplete. The video file Trace was previously unable to watch had finally been restored. This last video let Trace know about the existence of the elemental metal Sally had hid for Trace to find, as well as the map she had hidden inside one of Robert's blueprints, leading Trace to quickly locate the map. On the night of the same day, Speed called Pearl to talk to her about his mother. Pearl said that she had obtained DNA samples from Speed and his siblings and tested them with Molly's. The DNA ended up matching, except for Speed. This was because every time Speed came back to life, the new body he came back in wasn't his own. This affected Speed because she was technically no longer his mother. Solar Flare fell asleep once again that night, but instead of talking to Fluffy, he recalled himself touching the orb he had found. Then, a strange dream about an interaction between a Leafeon named Solar and Arceus. He was unable to understand anything that happened in it, though. The next day came, and this time the next destination was the museum. They all took a train to get there, and Solar Flare eventually fell asleep in it. He came back to the same place where he had talked to Fluffy, despite not having eaten any more chocolate. There, he found Fluffy in a frozen state once again. As he wondered what happened, a male Leafeon approached him, who had the same type of eyes as Fluffy. Solar Flare recognized him as the same Leafeon he saw in the dream he had earlier. The Leafeon turned out to be Solar Flare from a different timeline, named Solar. Solar was sent to this timeline via the orb Solar Flare managed to obtain. Solar then told Solar Flare about multiple things, such as more details about where Solar came from, what happened to him, the space virus, the deomorphs, and timeline reforms. Solar talked about some of these things as he was going through the memory path, a pocket dimension that stored every timeline where berserkers were present, as well as their power, a result of original Speed's wish to reset the timeline. After a while, the dream ended due to Fluffy beginning to wake up. Right before then, Solar told Solar Flare his mother was still alive, and really close to her. Elsewhere, Trace sent out Speed 2.0 to get the medal Sally had hidden. Speed 2.0 found it and began to head back to deliver it to Trace. As Speed 2.0 was heading back, Allie contacted it and Trace to tell them about some news he saw on television. This news reported on the deomorphs that had been spawning from the biotower that was formed from the military base's explosion. Speed 2.0 figured these creatures were what the Amorphinisms were talking about. Speed 2.0 decided to soon begin his plan to enter the memory path and eliminate the Amorphinisms as well as the entity that had begun to control them. Speed 2.0 remote controlled an armor to the place Speed was most recently killed to get rid of the body. As it traveled, Trace and Speed 2.0 thought of a plan to use an armor called Megaton Reprime to nuke all of the deomorphs. However, to use it effectively, they would need Speed to lend its help because of his turbo ability heavily upgraded the size and damage of the explosion. Speed 2.0 later remote controlled multiple armors to warn other cities about the deomorphs' arrival. Back on the island, everyone got to the museum after a while. There, Black unknowingly encountered Shard. Black recognized his voice as his lost brother's voice, Frost, but refused to believe it was him. Stupid. Sylvia noticed Speed was still down and dragged him to talk to her. Speed told Sylvia what he had found about his DNA, saying he no longer knew who he was anymore. Sylvia insisted that Speed was still himself, even if he no longer was in his original body, but he didn't listen. Sylvie got mad at Speed for refusing to understand and ran off. Speed briefly saw Speed 2.0's point of view again and unwillingly entered his turbo state because Speed 2.0 was using it, and because of it, Speed's energy began to be drained. When Sylvia looked at Speed again, she quickly noticed the change and began to keep others from noticing it too. The main 9 squad members, except for Crystal, agreed to call each other by their names from now on after a vote. Everybody later got to a game corner. Sylvia and Lazuli began to rack up points to win a Jolteon plush Sunshine wanted. Solar had found a way to communicate with Solar Flare as he was conscious. Soon, Sylvia told Lazuli what was going on with her and Speed. To Sylvia's surprise, Lazuli understood and volunteered to help. Sylvia and Lazuli began to run out of time to win the plush. Having no other option, they decided to play an all-or-nothing game. It was 2 players only, so to have better chances, they made Speed play it as well. The enemies from the game had some resemblance to the berserkers and armored beasts Speed fought long ago, thus bringing back the trauma he had forgotten from all those years ago. Lazuli was somehow able to make Speed fall asleep through a kiss, and when Speed woke up, Sylvia and Lazuli had won the game. Now, with the points they needed, the 3 of them rushed to the counter to buy the plush for Sunshine. By now, it was clear Sylvia's crush on Speed had reawakened, and she became really good friends with Lazuli by that point as well. That night, Black invited Speed to the shore of the beach house. They finally forgave each other there. Meanwhile, Solar Flare had come back to the place where he communicated with Fluffy, and now Solar. Solar got more into detail about the light orbs, which have turned out to store the memories of multiple Solar Flare from multiple timelines. He believes those memories are the key to breaking the cycle of rebirth, an endless cycle of timelines that continue to form inside the memory path. Solar began to look for a way to obtain all the orbs after he was relayed this information.